Coming on the scene as a metal drummer in the late 80s, Dave DiCenso has since worked in a diverse array of musical contexts, from hardcore and progressive to rock, pop, jazz fusion, funk, and soul. Along with his chameleon-like approach, he is known for his individual sound, musicality, and highly animated performances. Dave has also excelled in the field of education and now divides his time between playing, teaching, and composing.
I absolutely love playing drums, and I couldn't imagine not having that in my life. And I really, if I could help facilitate that and have an impact on your life so that you could play drums, that means the world to me.
Drummers who prefer dark cymbals with fast responses will love the HH Vanguard series from Sabian. Vanguard provides an elegant, complex sound that is always musical. Each model is fully hand-hammered to be thin and light, with a flatter profile for a deep fundamental tone and a smaller, musically integrated bell. The result is a clean, woody stick definition with exceptional articulation and responsiveness. Find detailed information at sabian.com/Vanguard. Welcome again to another episode of Drummer Nation, where my guest today is Dave DiCenso. Thank you for doing the show, Dave, and welcome. How are you?
Yeah, Michael, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
You have such a wonderful energy. You know, I'd never met you, but I saw you at that PASIC in 2019. And I just wanted to see what you were about. And I was blown away with your energy. Before we got to what you played or how you played, you just have such a vibe about you that's formidable. I really appreciate that.
That's really nice to hear. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for it's well for I mean it's nice to get, obviously, to receive compliments, but also to just sort of other people give you insight into yourself. You know, you might not be aware of how you're coming off, and I'm always pleased to know that I'm coming off in an inspiring way. You know,
Man, you were almost you were almost jumping off the chair, off the throne when I saw you. You know, you get into it just was so cool. But I must say, sometimes I don't dig that when the guys are that's all they have. You know, it's a swing for the fences.
I was just about to say that all that stuff is very genuine. You know, when I'm coming out of my chair, excuse me, it's because I have no choice in that moment, and I'm not being dramatic about it. It's like if I'm in a good place when I'm improvising, especially if I'm improvising and by myself, it's like it's like I'm trying, I should say, to get to a place without trying, of course. In the back of my mind, I'm aware that, to offer the most that I can offer, it behooves me, to achieve a desired result, right? To do well. But in the moment, you have to let go of that, of course. And it can be, it can be precarious.
You can't force it, I think is what you're saying.
You can't force it.
If it's real, if it's coming from who you are and it's expressed that way, it really comes across. If it's not, and it's an act, that comes across too.
And thank you for that, because you just helped me finish. I couldn't finish that thought. It's not an act. I'm following my muse, essentially. And sometimes my muse is going to pull me out of my chair because I might just either barely get somewhere, or I might be fully ready to get somewhere and still come out of my chair, but it's not.
Well, let me ask you, how do you balance those things? How do you balance those things? Because there's this way of playing and moving and coming out of the chair, and man, it's just, but there's also this, and you got that too.
Well, geez, man. All right. Thank you, Michael. Well, that to me is really what I'm interested in, more so now. I'm 52. I'm 53. Shit, I just had a birthday. I'm 53. And, my philosophy when I was younger was this, up and hitting you know, I don't think I've shared this one publicly. My first lesson, I may have shared this one publicly, but it bears repeating. My first lesson was in that, on that topic, if you will, or in that area, was from Peter Erskine. Seeing him play with Steely Dan. Actually, it was called the New York Rock and Soul Review, and and it was Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, but also with like an all-star cast. Phoebe Snow, Boss Skaggs, I think Michael McDonald was there that night too. I could be wrong on that one. Uh, oh, great guitar player. I forget his name, but anyway, it was at a shed. It was at a place called Great Woods in Mansfield, Mass. I went with I don't know, a car full of my buddies. Um, and we were out in the parking lot drinking beer, as you do when you're, you know, young. And I don't know. I don't even know if you could do that anymore. I haven't been a spectator to a concert in a while, outdoor concert. That's actually not true, but anyway, I wasn't drinking, you know, in the parking lot the last couple I went to. But we were that night, and sure enough, the show starts, and so it's it's a shed, and we hear the show start, and it sounds like a giant stereo got turned on, and it was like the greatest stereo that you ever heard. It was it was beautiful. It was powerful and perfect at the same time, but perfect in a good way. Like perfect can be, you know, sterile. This was a good perfect. It just sounded amazing, and it was full of energy. And my 23 or 4 year old mind, in my visual, my imagination, the music sort of implanted this visual in my head of what, I don't know if I was imagining what Peter was doing, like what he looked like according to the music that I could hear but couldn't see, or what I would have been doing if I was actually playing that music that I was hearing. So we friggin' beeline it for the doors, and we've got lawn seats, so we come in, where we come into the you know, the venue. The stage is way down to my right, and Peter is all the way stage. I always flip him around if it's stage
Stage
left or stage
left.
right.
Stage left would be on your right as you're looking at it.
Yeah, because stage left is audience, is
Audience right. Yeah.
art
Audience right.
audience.
I'm just trying to help you. Yeah.
Yeah, audience right.
hmm
So he's all the way stage left, and he's the first thing that you see if you're where I'm standing, and it just blew me away, man. Like when it he he was oh yeah, I'm on a short tether today. You know, like if he was playing like boom, da, ba, da, la, do, da, la, and in my mind I'm walking in and we're like, and I'm like boom, ba, oh, and that's what it felt like to me.
hmm
And the feeling didn't change when the visual changed. And that was just like, that was the first big whoof
hmm
into that direction.
That's a great
Oh,
story. The old guys and the beboppers would call it tipping. Tipping was
ooh,
where you were killing it, man, but the energy from visual appearances didn't get past your wrist.
ooh, I love that.
Just killing it. Well,
I love that.
I
See,
mean it as a compliment that you can do both because not everybody
well,
can
I've
fit
worked hard
those.
at it since, and I tell you, that literally was the first that I recall, like, you know, real conscious lesson for me in that area. And I started to act on that from that day on. But I'll tell you, man, it was a long journey. I could you just if your philosophy is big and you do big all the time for a long time, you can have that thought of like you can have that epiphany like holy shit, that's possible. I want to do that too. I want to be able to do that.
Well,
You can't just have that thought and then do it.
well,
You
you've
have to
done
keep
gigs,
having the
but you've done metal gigs and pop gigs, where you were big, and they probably wanted that, right?
yes, yes,
So there's a time and a place.
absolutely. And so, and for me, it comes down to what I want out of the instrument. And if I come at it from that angle versus what the instrument needs to do for the context that I'm in, and I'm not blaming it all on the context. I'm in control. I don't have to beat the shit out of the drums if somebody wants me to, if I don't want to,
Hmm.
unless they're going to be like, you got to do that, or we need to get somebody who's going to. But as I've gotten older, I come more at what I do from the angle of what is possible out of this instrument. And there's so much more when you leave a giant freaking dynamic ceiling above you. There's so much more possibility. That's my experience.
I love
And
that.
that,
My wife was watching an old Elvis thing last night, a live performance, and I noticed that it went up and it came down and it was big and it was small and it was intimate, then it was rocking, his post Vegas Elvis. And
yeah,
I made the comment, you don't really hear a lot of that in pop music anymore.
no, you don't. No,
Okay,
you
well,
don't.
before we lament the state of pop music, because we love music, uh, let's go back to you. You grew up in a musical family. In fact, your dad was a great drummer and had a drum shop that you worked at.
He was a blessing to so many people. He was a blessing to all who studied with him in that he gave you a well-rounded personal private education. You know, he he really he really did a wonderful service to people because so many teachers do not do that. And it's really important, especially when you get someone in at the ground. You get a student who's coming in at the ground level, you really have an opportunity to do a wonderful thing. Now, you can do wonderful things for young students in many ways, sure. But one of the ways is to give them a solid footing with which to, if they want to, go forward, you know? And he did that, man. And part of it was he was a very organized guy. And yeah, he had a very organized curriculum and it was well rounded and people took to it. My dad uh, was a great drummer and a great teacher and a great um, uh, ambassador, of the
Sure.
arts, I would say in general, but certainly with drumming and to in his area, in his spot. Like he was, he's a legend. What's that saying? I'm widely known in small circles, you know?
That's what drums are all about, really. I mean, I I did a thing a few years ago where I asked everyone I ran into. I've told this story before. I'll make it quick. I asked everyone I ran into if they could name a drummer, living or dead. And I'm not talking about musicians. I'm talking about bellmen and waitresses and lawyers and doctors and all
Yeah.
races and religions and creeds and colors and
Oh,
economic
that's cool. That's
everybody
cool.
for a year, over a year, and I found that about 6% could.
Did you document that?
No, I
Like, that's
just
cool.
roughshod, but
Yeah.
most of them couldn't. Now, if you say, well, don't you know who Ringo? Yeah, they would know if you told them. But to just pull it up, it's a very small circle, is what I'm getting at. That we tend to forget. Um, but
Yeah.
the initiated really love it. So your dad was involved with like kind of creating a drum set curriculum, right? I
Yes.
mean, there wasn't much of that back in the early days.
No, man, my dad was I mean, I think that's where I can't speak to his music as much as I can to his teaching because honestly, most of the stuff he did was by the time I was of age to go see him play was private. Most
Right.
of the stuff he did was private functions at that point. He came up playing the clubs. I'm sure the strip bars. I'm pretty sure he told me he played the strip clubs in the Combat Zone in Boston. And he started young, man. He was way underage when he started
Hmm.
as a professional drummer. And
So were you, right?
I think he was even younger. My first official gig was, paying gig was, I think I was 15.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm almost positive I was 15, and I was in the ninth grade, and it was a New Year's Eve party, and the band leader was an old cat, man. He was old, and I showed up with like big drums because that's all I had at the
Hmm.
time.
Big tubs,
and
big
and
cymbals.
and, ta- and talk about what's that?
Big drums, big cymbals, big sound.
Yes, yes, and no control.
Right.
I
That's
had no control. Like, I'm probably over dramatizing it, but it was hard to play quietly, man. You talk about that first lesson from Erskine. I still have to share that story with Peter, but incidentally, I've never told him that.
he'll like that.
So, um, yeah, man. Um, you know, uh,
So you were doing club
that was
dates as a
really
kid.
difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was really difficult. Yes, I started on 15. My dad, I think he started when he was younger than that.
But
But
that was great training, don't you think? I mean, I came up that way too. Did weddings and bar mitzvahs and luncheons and memorial dinners
yes,
and
yes,
corporate parties and whatever. And you would always be handed your ass on something. You know,
yes.
like, oh, what do
And
you mean you don't know cumbia? Whatever. Could be anything they throw at you. You
I
know.
could give you a good one.
Go ahead.
And I played this song probably 75 or 100 times over the course of like I don't know 6 or 7 years that I did that GB scene.
GB General Business.
General business, right? Um, all those types of gigs you were just talking about. And more, like doing the club dates, like where you play 3 sets a night, cover tunes. I remember playing like old Motown shit with these older cats. I'm like 19, and and you talk about an education. It's like, yeah. So I was
Mm-hmm.
developing a touch. I had to have been. These
Sure.
people wouldn't have wanted to play with me if I wasn't developing a touch. But I was very inside that, so I could see it step by step how challenging it was for me. Uh, where'd we go, Michael? What the hell are
Well,
we talking about?
when you were doing that, your mentors, your heroes, were not playing weddings. Who were you listening to then? Who did you want to be like when you were 16?
When I was 16, did you say?
Yeah.
Man, this shit's so fun. I'm gonna go off a tangent. So I might forget
It's all
what the
right.
hell what I'm talking about. Um, 16 years old, I was into Bonham.
Good start. Good start.
I got turned on to I got turned on to Zeppelin when I was in the seventh grade, and and I was way into Kiss before that, like very much so into Kiss. In fact, I just did a DJ playlist party with DW, and I offered up a Kiss song uh, from 1977, I believe it was, and when I heard Zeppelin, it really was sort of life changing. It's like it just sounded so foreign to me. The first song I heard, it was on vinyl. It was at my friend John Barbati's house. Who I was in a band with him. I was playing guitar, seventh grade, uh, and it was Black Dog, and it just sounded foreign, like weird, like cool, really cool. And then Bonzo goes, oh, wow. Uh, yeah. So, and Rush came along, Van Halen, Aerosmith, you know, I
Hmm.
grew up in the suburbs, man. It was rock and roll. We had a couple of great rock stations in Providence and in Boston, HJY and COZ. Um, The Who, like all of it, AC/DC, there was so much. There was so, I remember writing on my school books, like just doing bubble lettering of band names. And there was, like 25 bands whose songs I knew, whose drummers I knew, whose records I had.
So
Um,
eventually you came to terms with the jazz players, I presume, the Gads and Vinnies and
I sure did.
all those people. When did that factor into your listening?
Well, I had little hints of it. Well, first of all, I grew up exposed to jazz, although I
Mm-hmm.
was not interested in it. It didn't, I wasn't like trying to be averse to it. It didn't penetrate the way, the backbeat did and the pop melodies did of the day. And pop was pretty rich. Yes, it had its shallow spots for sure, but man, Lionel Richie was all over the airwaves. That dude could write a freaking song
He
after
could.
song.
Now, when you say pop, you mean it in the general sense of popular music,
Yeah,
right?
popular music, not like
Not rock, pop, easy listening, like a little tiny category. Popular music. In other words, you would include all those bands in pop.
um what bands? Like bands like
The ones you just
Rush
mentioned.
and
Yeah. Is Led
mm,
Zeppelin pop? Is
no.
okay.
In my, I could see, of course, it would make sense because they
Well,
were popular
I,
extremely.
I'm asking. That's why.
Yeah, for me, I sort of categorize it. I guess
Hmm.
um, it's pop for me was more, in a way, it was all pop because it was all popular, and you could listen to uh, a station that played, multi-styled playlists,
Hmm.
and you could
Sure.
hear, you know, I think if I remember correctly, you could hear, a wide spectrum of like from Zeppelin to Lionel, to the Commodores,
Hmm.
to Stevie Wonder, to Little River Band, and like Little River Band. Not all their songs were killing, but some of them were killing, like really solid. And I would say that was more pop,
Right.
where Zeppelin was more rock. Sabbath was not pop. They were popular. They
Right.
were my first show that I saw at an arena. My first arena rock concert was Black Sabbath. So, you know, I really so anyway, I got glimpses of bebop from my dad. He had and big band. He had a substantial record collection, and he played it. He played the vinyl, spun the vinyl, and my brothers had definitely were jazz influenced more so than myself. So I was exposed to like Chick Corea through my brothers, um, Chicago, Danny Seraphine, um, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Like
Sure. Yeah.
I remember a Michael Franks album. I remember George Benson.
So what I was getting at
Frickin'
is you had the whole mix. You had all kinds of drum set
I did. I
music.
I did. I just wasn't interested in it all, nor did I understand it all. Like jazz, literally, confounded me.
Hmm.
I remember thinking like, well, how do these people know where the hell they are? You know,
Sure. Yeah.
because I didn't understand jazz. I did not understand it.
Hmm.
You know, so I didn't understand that they were short songs that they were played once and then expounded upon
Hmm.
by the soloists.
Yeah. A lot of
Eh,
people are confused
yeah,
by that. Uh,
it just
so eventually, how did the gig at what you began to teach at some point, right? Or were you teaching all along?
well, I started the first lessons I ever gave were on guitar to a couple of buddies of mine in the neighborhood. Um, and then I started teaching drums. A short time after that, probably few years after that. I think I started teaching drums at my dad's shop. And I was probably, I don't know, 17, 18. But Michael, I just thought of Zach Danziger, who I just saw a clip of last night on YouTube. He was 17 when I went to the Drummers Collective in 1988, playing with Michel Camilo. I mean, come on.
When I
So,
moved when I moved to Los Angeles, the first guy I heard, a friend of mine was playing trombone with Bill Watrous' big band. So I went to
oh
hear
yeah,
him, and the drummer was Chad Wackerman, and he was like 17. And it's the
yeah,
first drummer I heard in
Brooks.
L.A. I was like, man, I'm going home. That's it. I've had it.
His younger brother Brooks too, man. He
Oh
was a
yeah, just
bad little dude when he was a little dude.
that was another musical family there too.
Yeah, very
So you
much so.
have books as an educator, though. At some point, you took this seriously.
Uh, yeah. I mean, it's that's interesting that you put it that way because I didn't take teaching as seriously when I first started doing it as I do now. I didn't respect it as much as I do now. I didn't honor it and appreciate it. Um, I didn't get it. I was very focused on being a player, and teaching was very much a means to that end for me.
So you were
And
probably more listening to playing more about playing with records than practicing out of method books.
well, I started drum lessons when I was 5 years old, and with my dad at my request. And you know, my memory is I didn't like it. It didn't go very well. I remember crying at least once. My dad being like not happy with my output,
Mm.
and man, I had a fair amount of natural ability, not a ton, not I wasn't a prodigy, but I could play and certainly enough to feel like I sounded good and I was having fun playing along to my frickin' 45s and my LPs. With my dad's floor speakers on either side of this Sonar drum set that I have stacked up over here. Um, and, I could, shit, man, that just took me out. The Sonar drums, it just took me up back to those days. So, um, yeah, teaching was a means to an end. I wanted to play. I was not a good student. Oh yeah, I was not a good student at that time. I was terrible at it, but I could play. So I would play to my records and not practice.
Hmm. Well, that is
And
practicing.
it, I wasn't practicing my lesson,
Well,
and so my dad wasn't pleased.
that's what I was getting at. Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't doing my Haskell Har snare drum book and my bass bops, Samuelano bass
Hmm.
bops book.
Well,
Uh,
that's kind of
you
how
know,
Jeff Porcaro came up, right? He had a famous dad drummer, and he
yeah,
played with records. That's about it. I mean, he just played
yeah,
with
yeah.
records all the time. Worked for
I did
him.
a lot of that, man. That was
Hmm.
those were some of the greatest days of my entire life.
Well, the
Still,
music was so great.
but yes, the music was so great. It was also just that time in my life where I'd go down in my parents' basement and you'd have these records that you could look at. You almost felt like you were there. Like I remember playing a Kiss Alive, both Kiss Alive records, Alive 1 and 2.
Hmm.
And god damn, it's like you open the records, you put the record on the crowd. I know they mixed the crowd in, it was doctored, but like the crowd came out of the speakers and these you figure if I'm 10 years old at the time, younger. I got into Kiss when I was like 8 or 9, and I could play along to Kiss. So I'm down there, and I was just thinking like those floor speakers were probably almost as tall as I
Yeah,
was
sure.
at that
Yeah, yeah.
point. So the music coming out of there was massive, and then the drums were right in between them. My God, it's still like it's still like palpable to me. Um, the joy of that, man, the
Still gives
exploration.
still gives you goosebumps, right?
It does, man. It gets me excited. I tell that to my students almost daily. Like I'll finish a lesson and they can sense my excitement, and I'm like, dude, or dudette, whatever the case may be. You know, I've been doing this since I've been 18 months old. There are pictures of me sitting on my dad's drums with sticks with a serious face on, like trying to, figure it out. And I still love it. Like I still that the instrument, the music still excites me. The possibilities, the learning, the never-ending learning,
Hmm.
the self-expression, and the sharing, of course, in teaching. But even without that, if I wasn't a teacher, it excites me still. And I'm very grateful for that because it's not been the trajectory has not been this. I've been like depressed, disenchanted. I've hit ground a couple of times, uh, pretty hard a couple of times, and you know,
Well, let me ask you this: as we get older, we learn that you can't satisfy yourself completely at the drum set. You have to have a balanced life. And I remember you saying somewhere your dad had a great saying, "Life is a full-time gig."
that's so awesome, man. It's so nice to talk about my dad, you know, uh,
Well, he had
and
that, right? I mean, he
exponentially.
had a family. He had his gigging, his playing, his teaching, his shop. He had a balanced. You got to have a few legs on the stool, or you're gonna fall.
Exactly. He did the best he could. That's not an easy balance, as most of us know, especially if you add children
Hmm.
to the mix. I mean, even just having a relationship and being a full time, musician, um, is a challenge. And I say that meaning it's probably more of a challenge than a lot of other occupations.
Right.
Maybe not. I don't know, but it seems that way to me. Because you really, I mean, what's that saying? Music is my mistress, right? I mean, that's the saying, right?
Ellington, yes.
Who?
Duke Ellington.
See, I told you, teach me some more.
It's just a book
Um,
title. But I'm sure you convey that to your students as well, right? That they have to have a balanced life and find a way to put this all in perspective and be human beings on this planet.
Absolutely, man. That's my thing as an educator is like I my philosophy is I teach the whole student.
Right, like a guru.
Yeah, I teach the whole student like a doctor would, a holistic
Hmm.
practitioner would teach would heal the whole patient, address the whole patient. Don't just look at the symptom. Let's look at the whole. What is it? I don't know. Organism. Let's look at the whole picture, the whole context of what. And I say to my students very regularly, we're at this point in your life. If you're 20 years old, you're certainly ready to start paying attention to the instrument that plays the instrument.
Well
And
said.
I didn't do that when I was 20 years old.
Hmm.
No one taught me to do that. My dad was trying to as a dad, but not I don't think so much as a teacher. And I didn't spend a lot of time studying with my dad, when
Hmm.
all said
Hmm.
and done. I mean, I did when I was a little kid, and like I said, it didn't take like, I studied with my dad for like 5 years, I think, from 5 to 10 years old. I didn't know how to read by the time I was done.
Well, it was
That
five to
wasn't his
ten.
fault.
You got to remember, you were 5 to 10. You know,
Yes,
you were a little
yes.
boy. Don't beat yourself up on that. You were a little
No,
boy.
I appreciate that, man, but I'm not beating myself up. I'm just sort of recounting and
Hmm.
I don't know, just sort of processing it. But I do appreciate that. Um,
Now, when we go to now, let's talk about Berkeley. You've been on the staff faculty there for how long?
I'm not telling.
A long time, and that's a
It's
great.
been 25 plus years. I think it's
Mm.
like 26 or 7 years. 94. So whatever that is. I was hired for the fall semester of 94.
Okay, well, I had never been there until I went up with Ralph Peterson. By the way, a moment,
Oh,
a moment of remembrance and good wishes
I've been
for
thinking about Ralph every day,
me too.
for a long time,
Me too.
you know.
Well, in the future, if you're watching this, he recently passed within the last week or so, and it's we all loved him. So, but let's move past that right now. If I go to school at Berkeley, there are so many great, great, great drummers on the staff there. So, does the student get the choice of who they pick, or do they go through different ones each semester, or how does a student track through that?
The student gets it, the student gets to pick based on their semester uh, level. So if you're an eighth semester student, you're going to get first pick. You'll be in the first round during registration to choose your private instructor. And then so it goes. So if you're a second semester student, you're going to get last pick. If you're a first semester student, I think you basically you're given a teacher. You know what? I don't know. You might be able to pick, but generally, by the time a first semester student registers, a lot of teachers are full.
Full.
Their schedules are full.
And I imagine there's a core curriculum that you have to address before you get to the specifics of working with a Brazilian drummer, for example. No?
Sorry, my head was somewhere else.
That's
Say
right.
that again.
I imagine there's a core curriculum you have to address as a student before you go with a Brazilian specialist or somebody who.
Well, I mean, you could end up with a Brazilian specialist, And I was just thinking, like, I can't even say that most teachers' schedules are full by the time a first semester student signs up. I don't even know if that's true. My schedule is full by the time that happens. So, that's how that works. And you could end up with but if, so, yeah, I mean, you could, in your second semester, if you come to Berkeley and about a teacher who's doing what you want to do, who teaches, specialty, if you will, or you're just a fan of that person, you as long as their schedule's not full, you can choose them.
And let's not forget, I learned when I did the North Texas thing in the 70s, and whatever's being taught at that school is passed around among the peers of the students, right?
Yes.
So you really have access to everything. And I know a lot of kids, learned as much from all the other guys, some women, mostly guys, than I did from the teachers themselves.
Meaning what your fellow students were offering.
We're offering from their experience and then from their other teachers they were with.
Yeah. Right.
So that's a giant resource, right?
Dude, right.
What a beautiful school.
Just propagating. It's just growing everywhere.
And also, aren't you encouraged there to be a professional artist? Like nobody's going to be upset if you have to go somewhere for 2 weeks and do a heavy gig or.
Oh yeah, like it's one of the reasons I've chosen to remain a part-time faculty member, because you have a little more freedom to do that than if you're full-time. And I've taken professional leaves on more than one occasion for long periods of time to tour with Josh Groban, for example. 2013, I was gone the whole year. 2011, gone most or half the year. 2014, I think I was gone for a summer, and I was teaching. At that time, I was teaching the summer semester, so I didn't for that summer. Anyway, there is room. It's you have to apply. If you're going to leave for a year, you've got to apply. You're supposed to do it in advance. And other than that, I think there's a cap of like 2 weeks. I think like you can't be jetting off in the middle of a semester. I had an offer that was a couple semesters ago to do a 5-week thing that I was really interested in doing. Um, and I didn't find out about it. You know, as you do in this business, you often don't find out about shit until it's like right around the corner. We need someone for this, you know.
Right.
Uh, and uh, and it's just, you know, I found out about it like right at the beginning of a fall semester. It was going to start right in the middle of the fall semester, and you know, it's just that one hurt.
Can't do them all.
You can't do them all, and you know, even if I was allowed to do that, you know, take 5 weeks off in the middle of a semester, I honestly, I think I'd feel like shit doing that to the students
Glad to hear you
because
say
they,
that.
you know, the students are the majority of them are coming to me because they want to study with me. So for me to leave for a third of the semester, that just would not sit well with me. So
Beautiful. Great,
anyway,
great response. Now tell me about the books you have. The books you wrote,
uh,
I should say.
that I wrote.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a few books. I've got 2 books that I wrote. I've got a third one that I'm aiming to release in 2021. The first one was released in 2009. It's called Universal Rhythms for Drum Set. Um, the premise behind that book was like, you know, the Rosetta Stone theory. Like they're, you know, like we're all trying to demystify this stuff, right? We're all trying to make it easy because the music should be the challenge, right? The music itself, the moment, that should be the challenge, not the rendering of the music. You know, it doesn't mean it's absolutely effortless. You know, I grew up in the 70s watching Lynn Swan make, you know, incredible catches that most humans would not be able to do it. He would do it gracefully. You know, it doesn't mean he wasn't expending some effort. He's just doing it artfully. So, um, so the premise behind the book. How did I get to Lynn Swan from this book?
From artistic, graceful delivery of the process of playing.
Okay, so with Universal Rhythms for Drum Set, oh yeah, demystifying. We're trying to make it easy, right?
Mm.
We're trying to make this easy. The challenge should be the music. So for me, I remember a time where I just was hitting creative walls. Like I didn't know what to say anymore. It's like I'm partaking in these conversations, these musical conversations, and I don't know what to say anymore. I feel like, you know, it's like such a cliche. I feel like, you know, I'm saying the same thing all the time. You know, I hear that all the time from my students. And I'm like, I got the answer for you. Oh,
What's the
you know, it's
answer?
a, well, the answer is you have to have an idea. You know, Universal Rhythms for Drum Set is about 5 ideas. And it teaches the student, the reader, how to interpret these 5 ideas in many different ways on the idea, off the idea, weaving in and out of the idea, um,
I like that.
so that we can expound upon the idea. That's what we're all trying to do. We're all storytellers, and if you don't have an idea, if your ideas are words, you're screwed. And that's exactly I know. See, like I know all this shit from experience. I remember being hamstrung and being thinking words when it was time to be creative and say something. Yeah, I would say a lot of words would come out, but you know what? How much content was there? You know, how much was there to really compel the listener versus sort of bore the listener? And I've also been on the other end of that, where I've been at a clinic. I think of one in particular, like a PASIC, one year, a long time ago, and seeing this incredible drummer, um, literally put me to sleep. My head was nodding, and this dude was like killing shit. Like he was up there killing shit, and maybe I had a late night the night before, but it was not. Whereas, I had already had that experience of seeing Steve Gadd play with the Buddy Rich Big Band at the Memorial Concert in Long Island in 1989 and come out of his chair playing a shuffle like,
I saw that, yeah.
I don't even remember the tempo, but it was, and I remember even at 21, in 1989, I was 21, full on metal. Philosophy was hit. And so I could relate to Steve Gadd on that level too, because he was laying into shit, certainly that night. But I had the experience of being moved by a couple of notes and a whole lot of sound and feel. I knew what that felt like. So now I know what it feels like also to play a shitload of notes, or to hear a shitload of notes and be moved to sleep, Z's instead of tears.
You probably know Adam Nussbaum, right? A friend of mine. He describes it as way too much of not enough.
That's cool. I like that, and I love Adam.
Yeah,
and Adam's a mother mama, and I have a great Adam Nussbaum story. He was so nice to me, man. Oh my God, I have this cassette over there, man. If I was not on my short leash, I'd grab it, but it's cool. It's this, and I kind of don't want to share it. It's like really dorky. It was this cassette that I put together. Cassette, first of all, right? It's like 93. And I go to NAMM with a bunch of these cassettes. Oh, I hated this part of this. Like, some people are really good at this, right? You sell, you market yourself, you brand yourself.
Right.
And all power to them. All the power to them. I was never good at that. Certainly some. So I push myself out of my comfort zone. I make this cassette of, like a reel, a tape reel, a bunch of short clips of studio work I've done. And this picture of me, and this is Dave DiCenso, picture of me, and then drummer. And I handed that shit out, man, and it was really embarrassing. And I'm not saying it should be. It was for me, okay? Adam Nussbaum's one of the persons I gave it to. I'm still living at my parents at this time. So it's like I'm like 24, 25. I get a message like a few weeks after NAMM on my parents' voicemail, and it's Adam Nussbaum. He said, "Hey, Dave, I just wanted to tell you, man, you're playing your ass off, kid. Keep going." And I was like,
good for him.
And so whenever I see Adam, I hardly ever see Adam, but whenever I have, I just, I let him know. I remind him of that and how much I appreciated that. He was the only one. He was, not that I was, well, yeah, I suppose I was looking for people to respond. Why else would you be doing it? Right? Why else would you be handing your shit out?
Either to try to get gigs or endorsements or just notoriety in the industry as a young man. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I hope I'm not coming off as above it all and
No, not at all. Not at all. You're coming at it as somebody has a lifelong commitment to trying to play the drums as an instrument and make good music with people, and to share that as a teacher. That's how you're coming off to me, and that's what I sense when I heard you at PASIC. I got all of that depth and all of that energy as well, and that's you exemplify that more than most drummers I can name. Who
Thank
have
you,
that passion that just grabs you, man, from the back of the room. And then nuance, space, musicality. I don't have to tell you, man. You're the teacher. You know it better
I appreciate it because it's been a lifelong. I've not let up. I'm not one of those guys who's only played drums. I've also taught. I've also had a family. And I've also written songs and play multiple instruments. I spent a couple of summers like just playing piano, trying to learn standards and having no natural ability for it.
Same here. No, none.
Brutal.
I can understand the theory, but when it comes to executing it,
Me too.
I can't do it.
So, next life, I want to be a pianist.
Yeah, well, if we could all come back as one thing, it should probably be a piano player because they have everything in front of them, right?
They have everything. And then if you can sing on top of that, oh, you could live on an island by yourself and you might get lonely, but you'd survive.
Hmm. So the playing is for the kind of an esoteric question. You play because you need to play because the creation of the music is the focus, or does it matter that it's heard, or that it's popular, or that it's listened to, or is it the just the expression that's the most important part?
That's a great, great question. It's been all of those things for me at different times. Um, so, speaking of cassettes, now there was a time in my life where I wanted to be a guitar player, like more than I wanted to be a drummer. I thought guitar was going to be my thing. And that, obviously changed. But guitar never went away. My desire to play guitar, my desire to play piano, which I'm terrible at. Like guitar, I can actually play to a degree. Um, and so there was a time, I should say, that desire to be musical on other instruments and write songs and sing, it never went away. So that's been a side, sort of mistress that since I was a boy. I was always enamored with guitar first,
Hmm.
and then piano came along, bass too. My God,
You want to
oh,
play them all.
yes, yes.
Speaking of which, now that everybody's playing on their own during COVID, were you doing any projects that way?
No, actually, COVID put the kibosh on. Well, not entire. Well, yes, temporarily, entirely. Like it just derailed this thing that I was working on with a collaborator friend of mine, and
But you
I
probably
have
like.
n-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have an album's worth of songs written for the first time in my life. Lyrics, soup to nuts, lyrics, guitar parts, maybe not all the bass parts, uh, the arrangements, like solid lyrics, melodies, uh, ideas for drum interpretations. And my plan, as this was all being created, was to not stop, but to document it all, record it all, and I'm going to, but I stopped. And part of the reason I stopped was COVID. Part of the reason I stopped was I had quite a scare in 2020. I realized how much hearing I've lost, and um, the scare was I wasn't exactly sure how I'd lost so much hearing. Um, I've been very much monitoring my hearing, capacity for a long time, and when I discovered just how much I'd lost, I got really scared, and um, because I didn't know what to do. It's like, am I losing hearing, in my everyday life? Did what's going on? Like, why all this hearing loss? So COVID hit right around the same time, and I've just been sort of hunkering. Like, I needed to seriously, I needed to like go fetal for a couple of months last year to figure out, or to just ride out the fear
Yeah,
um,
I think
of what I was going through.
riding it out is a good way to put it. We all had to just step back and realize we're not in control, and this thing's going to end sooner or later. I'm old enough now to where I've gotten 2 shots already, and it does
Yeah.
change your perspective a
Well,
lot
honestly, Michael, I wasn't even talking about the pandemic. I was talking about the fear of
of a
going
hearing.
forward in my career
Mm-hmm.
and going deaf.
Mm-hmm. And what's the
I've got,
status of
I've,
that? How are you with
I'm,
that? What's the status there? How are you with how's your hearing?
well, my hearing still is terrible, but uh, I have hearing aids now. I wear hearing aids. I'm 53. You know, I wear hearing aids. It was traumatic. I'm not gonna candy coat it. It was traumatic for me. I tend to take certain things pretty damn hard anyway. I'm not the best at rolling with the punches. I've taken a few on the chin, and this one knocked me out.
Hmm.
I was just scared for my life because if I couldn't do this, if the thing that I did with my life was going to cause me to go deaf, um, yeah, my hearing's terrible. I have hearing aids. I have a fantastic audiologist who's helped me um, on a technical level and on a just giving me knowledge that I trust and providing me with some sense of peace. I now wear uh, what's those GK ultraphones, the Gordy Knudsen
Hmm.
uh, ultraphones. They're basically Peltors with Sony drivers, Sony speakers in them. So it's good audio. I don't know if you'd say high end. I guess you could say it's pretty high end audio, fairly high end. Um, Way better than any alternatives that I've used, and the isolation is better. So I
Hmm.
feel safer there in recording situations, in teaching online, um, and teaching in person. Now down at Berkeley, I'm teaching. I'm back in person, and I'm wearing Peltors, and and, you know, and I haven't had to tour, so I don't have that fear. There's a part of me that there's a part of me that says, Dave, don't ever tour again, because you don't know. Playing in front of, and if this can help anybody, someone said to me, my best friend said to me, you're going through this. One of the reasons you're going through this is for the greater good. You're going to help people. Yeah. And so if I can help people right now, I would say be careful. Here's something I didn't know. I feel emotional about talking about this. I'm not going to cry, but I can feel this in my body. Um, I didn't know that people are susceptible. Certain people are more susceptible to hearing loss than other people. Whether you're a musician or a friggin' postman, you know, you could experience the same exact things in life. Your ears could. And you could be 50 years old and you could have lost 25% of your hearing in certain frequencies. And your best friend or your buddy who's 50 years old, no hearing loss. So I would encourage everybody to keep that in mind, because just because other people are able to, like, I think of people like I can't help but wonder about people like Dave Grohl, who's been hitting like a beast for as long as I have, as long as I started back around the same time, hitting like a beast, and no hearing protection. And Grohl's still doing it. It's like I don't think I'll ever hit the drums as hard as I used to, as hard as Dave Grohl I think still does. I don't think I'll ever do that again, unless I just know, like, this. It's and how do you know? And plexiglass, touring with plexiglass. Mm,
That's worse.
I I really think touring with Josh Groban, uh, uh, you know, I toured with him off and on for a few, I don't know, 4 years or so, and plexiglass. There was one tour I remember where I was surrounded in it, and it was tall. I was literally surrounded. We were playing with orchestras,
Hmm.
64-piece orchestras, and I've got like four double bass players. I'm here, and they're like you know, 6 feet away from me. The first one in the line is, so I would highly recommend you be careful. If you're make sure your in-ears are not make sure your in-ears are guaranteeing you protection, not just good audio, but protection. I was using plastic, which is the ones these are old ones. I was using these. I used this very pair on a tour, and I think it was a frickin' huge mistake, actually. Hard plastic, short canal, penetration, for lack of a better word. It doesn't go very far in, and
So,
so
so do you think it was the fact that they weren't as protective as they should be, or that the music coming through them was too loud?
um, I have to think that it was. See, this is what was so scary too when I discovered all this is I monitored as quietly as I could possibly do it. When
Mm-hmm.
I was like on the click, I couldn't hear the click.
Right.
Which in the studio I feel more comfortable. I'd rather do that. That's to me is more comfortable in the studio than doing it live because you've got so many people lining up to that click. It'd be optimum to have it a little louder, but I had that click I had everything way down.
So it wasn't that.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I think it was just the acoustic volume, and part of it.
Well, like you said, it could be genetic too. It could be everything.
Well,
Anyway,
yes,
is it
that's true.
it's
That's true.
stabilized at this point? Are you still losing your hearing, or is it stabilized?
As far as I know, it's stabilized, but I won't really know until my next
Mm-hmm.
audiogram.
So,
So, yeah,
last question about this: is there an advantage to playing that loud? Does it sound better, or is it just an energy thing that a shed,
that's
people can relate to?
that's such a good question, man. No, the advantage is it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy playing in arenas and putting on a visual show, and I enjoy hitting the drums hard. But I mean, Peter Erskine, we already talked about it. Peter Erskine, I wasn't playing bigger sheds than Greatwoods with Josh, well, some,
Well,
but
I saw Peter with Steely Dan in an indoor shed, but it was 20,000 people or something, and he had monitors in, but then he had like shooter headphones over those to keep this
who
Peter Erskine to keep
from
the
what I understand,
stage noise out, you know, because he had his mix fine, but then he had to have something to block all the other stuff
yeah,
coming in.
I tried that in sound check when I was touring with Josh, and I don't know. I could go do that right now. I could put those pelters on over these in ears, and there's still something about it that feels loud to me. It
Mm,
was weird. I tried that with gunshot headphones
right.
in sound check. I wasn't really too psyched about doing it on stage for performance, but I was willing to if they would, if they would have
Mm.
been okay with it. But it still felt kind of loud. But um, anyway, yeah, be careful with your ears, and no, you don't have to beat the shit out of the drums to make the drums sound great. In fact, this is even a cliche at this point. Most, you know, seasoned drummers of any length of seasoning know that you can overhit a drum. You can actually make a drum sound worse by hitting it
Right.
hard. So you gotta, and I'm good at it now. I gotta say I can toot my own horn in that regard. I know how to hit hard and with grace, like taking something off of it. So I play big and I will play hard, but I'll take something off of it. And you have to do that if you want to, you know, you gotta, That's how you get your size. That's how you get width. That's how you get size and width. Does size matter? Yes, it does. Even if you're playing like Peter Erskine at Great Woods that night, he was creating a sizable sound, texture. There was a lot there. It wasn't just volume. It wasn't just a point. There was a point, and there was a body, and there was skin. You know what I mean? And you
Absolutely.
can't do that if you're beating the crap out of the drum and not doing it gracefully.
Well, this has been great, Dave. We've gotten into a lot of good drum stuff and talked about music and life and the things that really make a musician able to make a career out of it. And to me, that's more important information from you that I appreciate than, page 37 of the syncopation book with
Yeah,
this
man.
variation and all that stuff. So I really
Cool, Michael.
appreciate it. There's some great answers you've had. And I'm
Thank you, man.
very
Great
inspiring
questions,
cat, very inspiring cat. So
dude.
my guest has
Thank you.
been Dave DiCenso on Drummer Nation. Uh, your website is what? DaveDicenso.com?
DaveDicenso.com. You
There's
can
some great
find me
stuff there. I was just there. And
cool. Thank you.
teaching at Berkeley.
Facebook, Instagram, Berkeley. Yup. Keep an eye out for online master classes that I've been doing with thegroovemasters.com.
A lot of education there for anybody watching. And check him out. Look him up. Bad Cat, one of the greats. Thanks again, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Michael, thanks so much, man. It was a pleasure. Great. I really like doing this with you.
Much appreciated.
All right, Michael.